is Jeff Siegel, Schlag Daddy at OTS Central, or anybody else is talking about this today. But you know, what's funny is the last thing I expected when I went on Facebook, because I'm a member of several wrestling Facebook pages there, especially WrestlingNewsWorld.com. But the last thing I would expect to hear from someone like Wrestling News World's Richard Gary, I should say. Or Richard Gray, or Gary, whatever his last name is. But the last thing I would expect to hear from him or see him report is the WWE releasing 11 superstars, actually make it 9 superstars, 1 referee, and 1 diva. Yeah. Now, some of these people would expect to see coming because pretty much they didn't really have much to do for them. Really? Really, you didn't have much to do. Okay, let's take a look at the list here. And this is the list, by the way, if you can see it. This is the list. Yeah, I had to write down the referee's name down there because it split off into a second page, and that second page apparently had Koopa Troopa, Mario Kart, blah, 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 whatever my nephew put down on it. But anyway, here's the list of superstars, and again, you could read it right there. This might surprise you, may not. But here's the list of superstars, if you will. JTG. A lot of people have been wondering, was he going to be released or not? Yes, he's finally released. He was the last one, believe it or not. But here's two that might surprise you. Drew McIntyre, Jinder Mahal. 2 members of 3MB or 3.5 MB. Why'd you release them when you were prominently featuring them in a feud with Los Matadores and El Torito? And you recently added Hornswoggle to the team? Why? I don't know. Here's another one. Might not be too surprising, but surprising seeing as though you featured her recently in a handicap match where she teamed with Alicia Fox against Nikki Bella, Axana. Now some might say maybe they released her because she was too sexual and everything. Maybe she was acting too sexual or something like that. She wouldn't tone down the PG. Tone down the PG or something. You know, if that's the case, then why the heck would you even sign her in the first place? And she had potential. Kurt Hawkins. This one surprised a lot of people because he was getting featured back on WWE TV. He was being featured on NXT, and people liked him. And it was kind of surprising because I think there was rumors maybe going around backstage that we didn't know of that maybe Hawkins was going to get a push again or get another shot. Theodore Long. People expected this because Teddy Long's contract had expired and he was already letting people know he was going to leave. Camacho. This is one that really surprised a lot of people. In fact, if you watch Schleg Daddy's video on it, really upsets him a lot because here's a guy that's a Tongan of Tongan descent, Haku's son, that you could really have pushed as the second coming of Haku, as the next Haku, as the next badass in the WWE. And instead you say, let's call him Camacho, oh, and let's make him Mexican, and when he debuts, let's make him the sidekick of Hunico, oh, who, by the way, now is the new Sin Cara. It's like WWE doesn't know what to do with certain people, right? And here's a guy that, according to reports, was heavily liked, was really liked in the locker rooms, in the NXT circles. So why would you get rid of him? And here's a guy that also at times would be featured on Superstar, maybe even main event. Why would you get rid of him? Then we have Brodus Clay, a guy that had the potential, had the charisma, took a gimmick that people thought was a joke, ran with it, made it into something even more so when you turned Tenzai into a babyface and made him into Sweet Tea, made them tons of funk, but then you decide, we don't need tons of funk anymore, let's turn Brodus Clay heel. You finally turn him into that monster heel. You have him on a freaking... you even go as far as having him on Miz TV, where he's talking about it's his time now. He's the main event player. And yet what happens? He ends up back in NXT. He loses to a very talented Adrian Neville in an NXT championship match. And then you release him. All because why? Because he fell, what? Because according to reports, he fell out of favor with the creative? Or maybe it's the fact that creative knew that if they pushed the guy, they would have to present him as an unstoppable heel. Maybe that's what it is. Because I don't see a guy like him falling out of favor. I see a guy like him being a monster heel, being presented as that unstoppable monster heel. I don't see him falling out of favor. Evan Bourne, a guy that I actually met when he was Matt Sydal, and he'll be Matt Sydal again. But here's a guy that just recently said he's celebrating 6 years with the WWE. Sounds like he's on the verge of coming back, and you decide, we don't need him. Bye-bye. Really? Here's a guy you could have teamed up with Tyson Kidd. Here's a guy that if you needed someone to guide Adrian Neville on the main roster, you could have put him on the main roster with him as a tag team. But oh no. You decide you don't need him anymore. You decide to take away the possibility of reuniting one of the most popular tag teams in recent memory, Air Boom. You decide, forget it. We don't need him. Well, you know what? There's an old saying. Your loss is someone else's gain. And then you have Yoshitatsu, who according to reports, many felt was regressing in the ring. Well, you know what? Maybe that regressing is kind of like with CM Punk. Maybe it's because he fell out of love. Maybe he wasn't in love with what he was doing anymore. Or because you weren't giving him the opportunities he deserved. He earned. Oh yeah, you put him at WrestleMania, you put him on WrestleMania 30, fine, that's cool. But guess what? What happens? He's the first eliminated. You couldn't let him go all the way to the finals, maybe make the final 4, final 6? And yet you wonder why your international fan base says, screw you sometimes. And then of course you got the referee Mark Harris. Unless they were going to make him a wrestler, really no big loss there, but he can go referee somewhere else, maybe finally become a wrestler somewhere. But all these names, yeah, some of them people didn't really mind seeing go or were expecting to see go, but come on. 3MB you were featuring prominently. Now you're just going to make Heath Slater your Java bitch? Again, excuse my language, you're going to make him a Java bitch again? As if he wasn't already, but you're going to make him one again? You know, unless you're finally saying, hey, 3MB, we don't need him. We're going to push Heath Slater. We're going to make Hornswoggle his manager or his mascot. Seriously. And you let go 2/3 of that group while they're in the middle of a feud with Los Matadores. But really, real good, WWE. Real good. Real good. All these names. Now, unless for some God-forsaken reason, excuse me for saying that, Lord. I apologize for saying that, Lord. But for some God-forsaken reason, this is nothing more than part of a storyline that basically is supposed to showcase the authority's abuse of power. Is this all part of a storyline? And these guys, they all end up coming back, and maybe in support of Daniel Bryan against the authority. That hey, I can accept that if this is all part of a storyline. But right now, I don't think it is. But if it is, hey, WWE, you got me and you got everybody else. You got us to believe you legitimately release these people. But because here's the thing, though, you have Triple H come out and say, hey, we're not gonna. You have people like Triple H come out and say, hey, we're not going to do the release anymore. We're just going to let the contracts expire and that's it. So it makes me question whether or not they're trying to sucker us in and make this into a storyline about the authorities' abuse of power. Or legitimately somebody's not thinking. Because why would you release some of these people that you know could really do something for you? Why would you release 2 members of a group that was currently in a feud with another team? Why would you release somebody that the wrestling people like that was part of a nice high-flying tag team? Why would you do that? Why would you release somebody that is a monster heel? It could have been an unstoppable monster heel. Why would you do this? Why would you release somebody that you could repackage as Haku's son and make him a legitimate badass? Why would you do this? You know what? There's going to be several people, several of those investors that are going to see this. They're going to see Stephanie going, and it's ironic. They find it kind of odd that this is happening on the same day Stephanie's out doing these public appearances is at non-WWE events. So it makes them wonder, makes them think, and that does throw people off. Why would you go back again? Why would WWE go back on saying, hey, we're not going to do releases anymore, we're just going to let contracts expire, and oh, but yeah, we're doing them anyway, and oh, by the way, Stephanie's doing this. It throws people off, and it makes one wonder if perhaps WWE is trying to sucker you in, trying to make you think one thing and then do another. I mean, like I said, if these releases are all part of something bigger, let's say they are part of a storyline, let's say they are, and it's all part of the Daniel Bryan versus Authority storyline, then yeah, I could accept that, because then you would have a whole group of wrestlers here aligned with Daniel Bryan, and then maybe the whole locker room aligned with him against the Authority to finally end this whole Authority storyline. I could accept that, and I'm sure anybody else could. But still, until we have any kind of evidence that we're being suckered in, that they are trying to throw us off, to me, this is the biggest mistake WWE can make by releasing 11 superstars. Some I can understand need to be let go. I get that. But you don't go back on your word and you do it all in one day. Because then people are going to see you going back on your word. Your investors are going to say, well, if they can't keep the word of saying we're just going to let contracts expire, why should we trust them? Why should we believe them? This is why things need to change. This is why we need new heads of management. And you know one thing they're going to blame? These investors are going to blame? You know one thing they're going to blame? The one thing they're going to blame, along with anybody else, it's going to be the network. It's going to be the WWE network. They're going to blame them. Now some of you might say, well, they can't blame the network. The network's only, what, 6 months old? Not even 5 months yet? Yeah, look, it's 5 months old. Don't get me wrong. It hasn't even had its 6 months yet. 6 months comes next month. It comes in August, okay? Actually, it's 4 months old when you think about it. It's 4 months going on 5. 4 months old. Yeah, they can't totally blame the network, but they will. They will point the finger at the WWE network, and they will say that the WWE network's the reason for these people being released. And one of the things they're going to point at is the fact that WWE wasted money on this because they wouldn't think it out. They wouldn't take the time to think it through thoroughly. And that financially they could have made everything work, made everybody happy. They're going to look at that. They're going to point that out. And then they're going to say, you know what the biggest thing they're going to point out is the fact that WWE took away the pay-per-view business. And that because they took away the pay-per-view business from several pay-per-view outlets like AT&T, DirecTV, Dish Network, and several other cable companies, that this is part of the result of it. And this is just the beginning of a major downfall. That's how they're going to look at it. Many people are going to point to that, point the blame, and point the finger of blame towards that. And that the only way, and this is what I feel they're going to say that the only way they can financially bounce back and probably bring some of these people back onto the roster is if they work something out with the cable companies. I guarantee it. I guarantee the WWE Network is going to get the blame for all this, and especially the structure of it, and mostly the fact that pay-per-views were taken away. And this does not favor WWE. Now, does this put a smile, these releases put a smile on the faces of people in TNA, Ring of Honor, and potentially Global Force Wrestling, GFW? Oh yeah, it puts a big smile on their faces. Puts a huge smile on their faces. Because think about it. Just think about it. TNA could say, hey, we're going to bring in Drew McIntyre, and oh, by the way, we're going to make Drew McIntyre the World Heavyweight Champion. And I guarantee you they'll do it. Ring of Honor would do the same thing. Any one of these guys that would potentially promise being world champions, they're going to make them world champions. I guarantee you. They're going to make them champions right off the bat. Doesn't matter if it's TNA, Ring of Honor, GFW, they're going to do it. Just to throw it in WWE's faces that your loss is our gain. That's what I was talking about earlier. That WWE's loss is someone else's gain, and that gain is Global Force Wrestling's gain, Ring of Honor's, and Total Nonstop Action Impact Wrestling's gain. It's their gain, WWE's loss. And they're going to do exactly what they've done with everybody else WWE's released in the past, but eventually it's also brought back. They're going to make them champions. They're going to make them the world champions just to rub it in their faces. I guarantee it. I guarantee you know it's true. I know it's true. So again, unless this is part of some kind of big, surprise, some kind of thing to throw us off, and it's part of a major storyline, and it's basically a more major part of the Daniel Bryan versus Authority storyline, or the WWE versus Authority storyline, then I can accept that. I can accept that. But if right now, until we get proof of something like that being a possibility, WWE's loss is TNA, Ring of Honor, and GWF's gain, and the blame, they got to be prepared for this, is going to be placed solely on the network and the structure of the network, and mostly the fact that they've taken away the pay-per-view business from all the pay-per-view providers. They got to be ready for that. And they're going to have to be ready for some major backlash from not just fans, but from major investors. Especially a certain group that wants management changed up there in the WWE offices. So, that's my thoughts on this. You let me know what you think. Comment down below. I'll talk to y'all later.